Ciao Sandro,
Buonasera.
buonasera.
Salve, come state? Tutto bene?
Tutto a posto, grazie. Ciao Vanessa.
Ciao Alessandra. Ciao
Allora,
a tutti.
io direi di cominciare nel frattempo che aspettiamo Said.
Okay.
So, welcome everybody. This is a conference, online conference under IMRF. Good morning, Sayed. We are inside the IMRF first meeting. This is the first meeting at all because it comes 4 years later, the last meeting, because it was a long process to develop this idea to make an international forum to discuss about migration. And it's really important because it took 4 years in 2 different ways to try and understand what means migration, a new way to understand what migration means. So in 2018, they made a global compact for safe, orderly and regular migration, usually called the GCM, governments, stakeholders in the United Nations systems. Decided to meet these days from 17 to 20 of May this year to try and write a new regulation, a new document to decide exactly what we intend with migration. Migration is really something strange because migration is not new. Even if in Italy, in Europe, and in the world, it's considered something special, something extraordinary. It is not extraordinary, it's normal. The first migrations are dated 410,000 years ago from Africa to Europe and from Middle East to Europe. So it's not a new way to move, and it's not a new way to develop. The reasons then and now for these people to come and to move out of their country, out of their territory, are always the same: our climate and environment changes and the way to find a better place to where they can live. environmental changes are taking place right now, and we talk about them. But there is a big mistake. They are not related to migration. So we are not now trying and mix together migration and climate and environmental changes. These are really a challenge. It's a challenge because nobody talks about that. Refugee migrants are not considered at all. But according to IOM estimates, they will be about 1 billion people within this century. So it's really a big problem that we have to be prepared, being able to manage this problem. There are two kinds of migration connected with climate and environment. The first one is a quick one. They are both the same. The cases are almost the same, but there is a big difference related with time. Climate and environment changes like enhancement of environmental temperatures or climate temperatures or CO2 emissions are small time changes. So we can see what is happening in few years, in decades. But there is another kind of climate changes like hurricanes, earthquakes, or other things that are really in short time. So it happened in really short times. Both of them produce migration. Both of them produce moving from a country to another. And of these, probably it's the most important things. We have to regulate this kind of migration, regulate and understand what kind of problems are connected with this kind of problems. We will discuss about that with two friends of us. First of all, Sayed Hussein is here with us. And we would like, Sayed, are you here with us? I don't know if you can hear me.
I'm here.
Yes, okay.
Hi,
so,
everyone, I'm here.
So
do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We welcome Sayed Hussein of Missing Children Europe and United Italy. And we are discussing about migration, about people who are moving from a country to another, in particular with children who are moving from a country to another. So Sayed, what's your opinion about that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Alessandro, and it's a pleasure to be here. I would like to somehow bring the perspective of refugees. I'm originally from Afghanistan. I have been in Pakistan as a refugee, in Iran, in Turkey, in Greece, and in Italy where I asked asylum. So I have been through, I've personally experienced forced migration, and unfortunately not have been any legal way or safe channel to be resettled in Europe or any other Western countries. I did a long journey of 8 years, and then in Italy I have been also through the procedure of asylum, so to get my to be recognized as refugee. Just regarding the topic of climate change, so I would like to somehow speak about this issue, which is really important, and which is somehow making us understand that we are on the same boat, no? Because with the time, if the temperatures are increasing, it will impact not only poor countries, but also the developed countries, and it has more global impact. As an example of Afghanistan, unfortunately, we know that it has been for more than 43 years in conflict, our country. Before with the Russian invasion, the Soviet invasion, and then later there was civic war, then after Taliban's, and then 20 years of Western countries' presence, and later again now the countries went under the Taliban control and an integralist group. So people, they speak more about this conflict. The Afghanistan is a country in civil war and conflicts and etc. violence, but unfortunately very we hear very little about the impact of climate change on our country. So I can make an example. We have around 5 million internal displaced people, so-called IDPs. People that they somehow they are forced to leave their home, but they are still within the Afghan borders inside the country. And majority of these people that they are displaced internally, they are because of climate change, because there is lack of water resources, because there is no rain. Many territories, they do not have any access to make agriculture to quite enough quantity of water. So the reason is that they are somehow forced to leave the country. And I just want to also highlight an important issue here. Afghanistan, if we see globally, regarding the emission of CO2, Afghanistan has less than 0.5%, which is a very low amount, a very low percentage on global level on emission of CO2. But it is one of the countries that would face the impact of climate change. So this is one of the country on global level that which is not somehow prepared to face the consequences of climate change. So this is really important to mention. And second thing, unfortunately, we see that on global level, there are always like the superpower countries, biggest countries, more developed countries, Western countries like the USA, European countries, Australia, now also China, and etc. They have more spaces to somehow speak about climate change, or they are somehow the decision takers, so they take these decisions that how to face the climate change. But unfortunately, the poor countries, the countries that they are less developed, or countries like Afghanistan, that they are on the bottom of regarding the financial and economic situation because of violence, climate change, and etc. These countries are like poor, and they are somehow exposed to face the consequences of this global climate change, but they have a very less opportunities or space that they can take the floor and then they have to say. So this is also important. So one of the reasons that I think we as developed countries, Western countries, we need to ensure the meaningful participation of these countries that they are now currently somehow facing the consequences. So if they are fighting for the situation, the consequences of climate change, now it means that they are somehow fighting for the future of other countries, developed countries, that they are somehow are less impacted now, less affected by the climate change. So this is really an important issue. Another thing that I would like, as an example of my country, I would like to mention here, for example, one of the reasons that Afghanistan went again under the control of this integralist group Taliban is because neighboring countries, they are also affected by climate change. So we can speak about Iran. Iran is another country which is somehow affected very extremely by the lack of rainings, lack of water resources. The same issue in Pakistan. So these countries, they somehow supported Taliban in order to destabilize the country. It means that if there is disstability in country, there will be less opportunity of development. So I would like to mention an example. Last year, before the collapse of Afghan government, the Afghan president Ashraf Ghani, he was opening a dam close to Iranian border, which was constructed by financial support of India. And in that occasion, during the inauguration of that dam, he said that from now, we will ask to Iran for our water, we will ask the petrol. So it is what it means. And we see that later there was somehow in the same region where the dam was constructed, there was violence, and that region went under Taliban. So it means that countries, because they are facing challenges like climate change, because there's lack of water resources, many other climate disasters are happening. So these countries, they somehow use integralist groups, they use violence, they use conflict in order to somehow get profit of resources of countries that they are not developed, or they are not somehow there is lack of stability. So this is also to take in consideration regarding our country. And then, because here again I would like to mention another example of my country, because Afghanistan is also famous for the production of opium. Because of climate change, many regions, territories in Afghanistan, they are becoming without water. So they are becoming deserts. And this lack of water, and because agricultures, they need to somehow to have resources to survive, they start to cultivate opium, because this means dried territories and soils, they are more suitable for production of opium. So this is also the consequences of climate change. They're increasing the production of opium, which has also then impact, because Afghanistan is one of the top countries that produces opium. And this opium, obviously, the market is not in Afghanistan, but it goes behind the boundaries. It goes to Iran. From Iran, it goes towards India in Asian market, and also towards Europe and Western countries, and which has impact on the life of people, no? Because those drugs are used by somehow. So this is the reason to take also in consideration, and to give more opportunity from these territories that they are really affected currently, that they are more exposed on current level, that they are facing the consequences of climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Syed. Three considerations about what you said is really important. The first one is that to pay the expenses of climate changes usually are the poor countries. That's the first consideration that is really important, because I think it's really to think about that. The second consideration I think we should take apart is that environment stability makes no migration. So if we work for that, we didn't have, if you really make something for environment and slow down environmental changes and climate changes, probably we will have less migrations. So this is really important. And the most important thing is that these countries are not prepared. But not prepared to afford climate changes, but not afford to not prepared to afford migration. So that's really important, because the most big migrations are to climate, to poor countries. That's really strange, but it's not the truth. In Africa, in Uganda, in Nigeria, in other countries. So it's not in rich countries. So that's another consideration to make. And about catastrophes or about hurricanes and other things, they are more prepared. The poor countries are more prepared than rich countries. That's another strange thing. The Sendai framework, for instance, is not used in modern countries, in G20 countries, is in G8 countries. So it's really strange about that, but that's the truth. We don't understand why it is, but that's the truth. Vanessa, we have another host here, another guest, and we are happy to have Vanessa, who is a journalist who lives more in Libya and Tunisia. So she lives with migration coming from the center of Africa to Italy, to Europe, to Spain, to Greece. So Vanessa, what do you think about that? And what about environmental migration?
Yeah, dear Alexandro, thank you. And thank you all your guests and speaker. It's a big honor for me to be here and speak before you today. As a journalist, I will try to tell you about the experience I got in North Africa, Libya and Tunisia, sending you the testimonials I have collected on the ground and some recommendation to correct some gaps, perhaps due to a lack of knowledge of the area. While Libya, once before 2011, was a destination for foreign workers drawn by a strong economy, post-civil war, migrants have used the country as a transit point to set off for Europe. True, as European borders have hardened since the 2015-2016 migration crisis, many have remained stranded in the country, in the North African country. Amid profound instability, political instability and military instability unleashed with the Libyan civil war and rival factions vying for power, conditions facing the about 650,000 migrants who remain in Libya have been really hard, really dire. Those living in the community are vulnerable to extortions, violence, and slave-like work conditions, while migrants held in the detention centers may experience crowding, sexual abuse, forced labor, torture, deprivation of food, water, sunlight. So very terrible conditions. We just remember that during the conflict in 2019, an air strike hit a migrant detention center in close to Tripoli, in the suburb of Tripoli. But we all know about, we are all familiar about these situations because have been repeatedly reported by the media and the international organizations. Today, I want to break a lance in defense of our Libyan neighbors. Although Libya is not a starting point for migration, is not the origin of the migratory flow, is just a transit point. Hundreds of men belonging to security agencies and the Libyan Coast Guard work day and night in open sea to prevent those migrants from reaching our shores. They don't always manage to track down all departures, and too often we hear the news of deaths on the sea. But it's too easy to blame the Libyans, to blame the Libyan Coast Guard, to accuse them and giving them the responsibility, when in reality, they are doing the dirty work for us. It's also true that there have been accidents and officers involved in human trafficking. Those in charge of stopping immigration were sometimes the same as the organizers of the sea travels, but they are not all like that. This is very important to say today. I want to say clearly because I met many of them. I spoke with many commanders of this security agency in Libya and the Libyan Coast Guard, and they really sacrificed their life, their time with their families to do their work, and they try to do in the best way they can in a very hard conditions. So it's very important that the various actors operating on the Mediterranean Sea, I'm talking about Libyan Coast Guard, Italian and Maltese Coast Guard, but even NGOs that are here listening today must strengthen the coordination and the communication between them. It's really too simple to condemn and attacks those who are working in really unimaginable conditions, really with few money and few resources and few means. It's equally true that the traffickers in Libya have become more astute, are really well organized, and they have created real networks, sometimes hiding behind non-governmental organizations to obtain the financial funds of the European institutions or the international communities or government or the United Nations. So it's really important that all those actors make sure that money doesn't finish anymore on the network of human traffickers. Immigration is increasingly used as a weapon or political blackmail between state actors. Although it's very difficult to prove, I did many investigations and I met many actors, and we have the feeling that some trouble spots are being fueled by some state actors, by some countries against other countries, just to put in trouble the international cooperation. The same happens in reporting facts and responsibilities. The same happens reporting the news. In Libya, only the last link in the chain, I mean, the less important person is the scapegoat, ends up at the gallows, finish on the news, has been sanctioned, while the real perpetrators, the people behind, who finance those gangs, who give means, who sell weapons, who sell them rubber boats, enjoy political impunity and international protection or recognition. This is very important to say today. Regarding Tunisia, where I spent my last 3-4 years, we all know that there are thousands of migrants that sometimes have been rescued by Tunisian Coast Guard after they departed from Libya. And they find actually trapped themselves in Tunisia. They don't want to spend all their life there, but they are forced to stay there, and sometimes they prefer to risk their life to go back to Libya because the economic conditions in Tunisia are very, very bad. Most of them stay in shelter centers, while others prefer to rent a shared apartment, which amounts to 450, 500 dinars, less or more 150 euro. The price of the flat is not exorbitant compared to other countries in the area, but they don't have, they really have difficulties to find even food for their families, to find food for themselves, because even the local communities, the Tunisian people, are passing really terrible time with the economic crisis they are experiencing because of the political instability, because of the terrorism state emergency side 2015, because of the coronavirus, and now the war between Russia and Ukraine and the Russian aggression to Ukraine. So it's really, really complicated to live there, even for the local communities. So after spending over 4 years in North Africa, traveling between Libya, Tunisia, and Egypt, I'm so sorry to tell you that the entire Western approach is wrong in managing the immigration. We cannot continue to offer support to Libya and Tunisia just to keep migrants away from our coasts, from our countries, because those movements of people, for the reason you, Alexandro, you explained it very well, and also Sayed explained very well, will never end. It's necessary to rethink the approach and a structural intervention that takes into account local realities, state and non-state actors, supporting them not only economically for carrying out the dirty job, but also to explain them and accompany them, to form and train them from the human rights and on the human rights and the best practice to treat well those people. The war in Ukraine placed Italy and the European Union as a whole in front of one of the most serious humanitarian, security, energy, economic crises. But above all, food, because food is starting to lack in Tunisia. There was no flow, there were problems with bread. So it's really necessary now to invest in bilateral agreements with the countries from which migrants depart and with those of transit to develop talents, to promote business, and create favorable conditions to stem the flow of economic migrants. I'm referring, for example, to the energetic sector. There is a need for a renewal in Western policy, creating programs that take into account climate change and, above all, the geopolitical framework that has suddenly became much more dangerous and uncertain. The implementation of green energy projects, for example, will have an enormous advantage in economic, employment, and security supply terms, with benefits for Europe and for our African partners. Thinking of building walls or isolating the emergency on this side or the other side of the Mediterranean only produced deaths and further crises. Africa has an artistic, cultural, scientific potential and has gained an experience that Europe can only benefit from in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. It's your words are really full of inspiration under several points, like environment stability, political instability, social consequence, and human trafficking. Human trafficking is particularly important for me because it's related to another topic we would like to discuss, but not today, and it's identity of people victims of this trafficking. So they are all really, really important topics, really important arguments to discuss and to suggest to the IMRF. We are here for this reason. We are here to suggest something, for suggesting opportunities to make a plane and better work. I would like to Professor Messina to speak. Professor Messina, it's director of the National School of Environment of Movimento Azzurro. So, Angelo. Il microfono.
I listened very carefully to the scheduled speeches and they were doubtless very interesting. I think the Secretary of the Scuola Nazionale Ambiente of Movimento Azzurro, Sandro Mauceri, for having organized this meeting very well. I thank Sid Hussain, Vanessa Tomasini, and all of you for the precious contribution of ideas you have expressed. In my opinion, what you have said is useful for outlining an operational work plan whose implementation can give a significant contribution to the dramatic problem of human environmental migration, and not only. The migratory phenomenon was practically born with man. Since its appearance and for a long time still, animal among animal, Many us led the life of a nomad, constantly moving in search of prey, fruit, and spontaneous plants which he ate. All later is a result of his cultural evolution. He learned to cultivate plants and raise animals and became partially settled. But he never stopped moving. In practice, the entire history of humanity and in all areas is marked by the movement of small groups or entire population from one continent to another. Continuously increasing migratory flows, truly autostoppable and autogovernable, due to multiple factors and also forward by to facilitation of mobility. Today, the migratory phenomenon is assumed working dimension. Although interventions are suggested with the aim of limiting the scope, the number of environmental refugees is constantly growing and the migratory phenomenon appears as autostoppable as it is auto-vulnerable and often very tragic. Every year, 10 of millions of people continue to leave their homes, their countries, and their loved ones they survive and face difficulties that leave no choice. By the effort conducted by international community with the global combat for safe, orderly, and regular migration were not enough, the answer to this question, which may seem obvious, is to be found in the causes of the phenomenon of environmental migration. Environmental criticality and migratory flows. There is no doubt that the migratory phenomenon is intimately correlated with the multiple environmental criticalities, social, economic, and political problems which yesterday and even more today generate and feed it.
Thank you very much, Professor Messina. Time is over because we have a limited time of conference. So thank you very much for your effort, and thank you very much for speaking English, because we know you speak quite well French, but we apply really very much for your efforts to speak French. Thank you everybody for being here, and we will